If you love philosophical rambles like the interview you're about to hear with filmmaker Dan Knight coming into your ear holes for free each and every week, head to comingupnext.com.au where you can subscribe to this here podcast. Select iTunes, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, whichever platform you listen to, hit that subscribe button. It's going to download for you automatically each and every week. Hey folks, welcome back to another podcast ramble. Thanks for tuning in again, and what a way to kick off the year with my guest from last week, Joe Berlinger. He came on the show and spoke about his dual Ted Bundy projects. One is scripted, starring Zac Efron, which is set to drop at Sundance this coming weekend, and the other is a true crime series, which is going to be hitting Netflix on the 24th of January. We also spoke about the Paradise Lost trilogy, which is really where he made his name as a documentary filmmaker, and Some Kind of Monster, working with Metallica, working with Tony Robbins on I Am Not Your Guru. Go to comingupnext.com.au, you'll find it there, along with the entire back catalogue. My guest this week has been working on a film project for the last 15 years, and it's just had its debut at Flickerfest in Sydney. Dan Knight is someone who I've known. He's been kind of in my circles for quite a while, and I remember getting wind of this project. It's based on a Terry Pratchett story called Trollbridge. The film is called Trollbridge, and I really wanted to speak with Dan about what it takes, the kind of persistence, the challenges, the triumphs, the difficulties faced in putting together a film like this over such a long period of time. All the iterations it goes through. They had one of the most successful, I think actually the most successful Australian Kickstarter campaign at the time, around about 2011. So I was very excited when I saw that the film was going out into the world and having its debut. I was really excited about speaking with Dan on the show. If you want to check out a trailer and any information on the film, including ways to pre-order it, you can head to trollbridge.film. But anyway, we talk about the usual musings. You know the drill. So please welcome to Coming Up Next, the podcast, Dan Knight. Congratulations again, man, on Flickerfest. It must be... I mean, I couldn't even really imagine what it would feel like to get to the kind of, not the end, but to get to this point of a 15-year journey and to then watch your film completed with an entire audience at a film festival.
Yeah, well, it was a thrill. I mean, we're very lucky in that we'd been kind of running iterations of the film throughout the years at the various Discworld conventions. So it wasn't technically the first time I'd seen it with an audience, but it was certainly the first time I'd seen it with, I guess, your regular punter, your non-Discworld fan. And being able to hear their reactions to the project after a long time was... that had an air of finality about it for me. It's not quite over yet, not by a long shot, but it was certainly a pleasure just to reach that milestone.
Well, in a sense, this is kind of the beginning, I guess.
Yeah, the beginning of the publicity tour now. It's all about running the festival gauntlet and I guess trying to get the next projects up off the ground, whatever they may be.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really keen to kind of dig into the whole process and I guess what it takes from your point of view to persist with a project for that long. But I like to start kind of segue through my conversations right at the beginning of a person's kind of artistic life. So I wonder if you remember what or when the first time was that you made a film or you made did a play or something in your childhood.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'd always been a performer through primary school. I mean, I was I guess I was bullied relentlessly, and I found performance as a way of being able to control how people interacted or saw me. If I was able to make fun of myself first, I was actually able to control the conversation. So I took performance on, or drama on, as a secondary subject in high school. I really, really liked it and wanted to be an actor. I then joined a local theatre group called Black Yak Theatre in WA, and they were incredibly supportive. And one of the shows they put on, which I auditioned for, was Mort, and that was a stage adaptation of one of the Discworld books. So my introduction to Discworld was completely through performance, and it was such an incredible book to read. It kind of stuck with me, the world, and I then went and, I wanted to be able to do a decent audition. So I then pretty much started picking up all the books and reading them like you wouldn't believe. And then from there, I was never going to be able to make it as an actor in WA, so I moved over to Melbourne to try and to try and see what I could do here. And I was constantly thinking about Discworld in the back of my head, and I was doing all these student films, and I directed a fair bit of a little bit of theatre. And I was doing these student films, and I was kind of thinking, they're not actually teaching these directors how to deal with actors. I thought, I can do that. And I'd been saying it for such a long time. My friends were like, yeah, are you actually going to do that? Or are you just going to talk? And I thought, yeah, I'm going to do it. And I thought, what better film to do than a short Discworld film? Because I was already so familiar. Back in WA, we'd done 5 plays by that point. I directed a couple, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to direct a short Discworld film. So it's all interlocked, all of that. For such a long time, I'd been working on that short for, I guess it's coming up to 16 years now, and the plays and whatnot that I'd done prior to that all fed into that.
It's a pretty incredible thing, I guess, to reflect on, that how kind of interwoven all of that is. When you were whereabouts in WA?
Perth.
From Perth.
Yeah.
Was your family were they in the arts at all? Were they?
I have an uncle who works in circus, but he was there on and off, but he didn't ring me up or anything like that. I got no idea who my father... I know who my father is, but I haven't seen him since I was 3. And my mother was a photographer, but that was kind of the only arts influence there as well. I wasn't brought up in kind of an artistic environment. It was just something I fell into as a form of escapism and dealing with my real world issues.
I guess that's kind of I don't want to say it's a common thread, but it's a great way to, like you said before, to be able to control your environment, or at least to kind of escape, to use your imagination to really delve into that world. And
don't they say directors are just people that can't deal with reality? So I think that's probably a part of it. It's being able to shape my own reality and being in control of that as a kind of a dictatory kind of thing. I was able to have something of myself that was completely of my own construction, rather than whatever forces that were happening in the world that I had no control over whatsoever.
And when you moved to Melbourne, were you studying? Did you study film, or did you just go into working on student films?
Yeah, I didn't have a show reel because I'd just done theatre at that point. So I was told, you need to get a show reel together. Well, the only way I'm going to be able to do that is to assist on these student films. And in doing so, I met a whole heap of people and was able to go, I could use that person here and that person here, and I could build my own film. Now, I had no idea how to make a film. It was completely and utterly arrogant of me to think that I would be able to know how to make a film. But I understood actors, and that was the starting point.
Sure. And from there, what was the process of deciding that Trollbridge was going to be the piece that you wanted to produce?
I definitely knew I wanted to do Discworld, and there was a few short stories that he'd written, and of those I thought Trollbridge was definitely the most cinematic of his shorts, and that was it. That was pretty much the entire... I pretty much love all of Terry's work. There's not much I don't like. I'd be happy to direct anything of his. So just choosing the most cinematic, I thought I'd be able to crowdfund that the easiest, and here we are.
So I guess it was, what, about 2003 that you made that decision?
Yeah, I'd been talking shit about it for such a long time before that, but 2003 was when we started location scouting.
Right.
That was when we signed the documentation with Terry's publisher, Colin Smythe, and it was actually happening. This was something we were progressing with.
So, I mean, to the best of my knowledge, around, what was it, like April 2011, you started a Kickstarter campaign.
Uh-huh.
What was taking place between 2003 and 2011?
Screwing everything up, essentially. So there's so many different versions of the film now, but there was a very different version of Trollbridge that existed in that time period. When we did the crowdfunding, we crowdfunded for $5,000, which for a first-time filmmaker was like, that's incredible. Oh my God, I've got all the money I could ever possibly need, which was some naivety, I tell you.
That was also before crowdfunding, like before everyone was doing crowdfunding.
Yeah, it was before Kickstarter existed, so we had to do it before PayPal was in Australia even, so we had to use another platform called Paymate, so people were able to put the money in there, and then we used the money to feed people, transportation, makeup and hair, costuming, the things that you need for a film.
I remember, I have a vague memory of Liam McIntyre, who's a mutual friend of ours, and Damien Chehi, who I went to film school with, filming some kind of battle scene or something to do with Trollbridge, which must be one of these earlier iterations that you're talking about.
Yeah, that was kind of a 1.2 iteration. When we did the original version of Trollbridge, I wrote a little bit of a prologue at the beginning, which had nothing to do with the story. And basically, the only reason I wrote it is because I wanted to shoot a sword fight. That was literally the only reason. So I was able to pull in the tropes and make some fun of the barbarian genre while doing so. And we in the original version, we lost half of that footage. So we knew we had to reshoot it all again. At this point, Terry had made the comment to me that he thought he could have written it better. Obviously, right, he can. And I thought, well, that's never going to be an option. But I wrote to him anyway and said, well, you said you thought you could write it better. Now is actually your opportunity to do so. And he wrote some beautiful dialogue for that scene. And as soon as we had that dialogue, I thought, oh my God, if we're going to reshoot this, let's do it on a way larger scale. So we shot what was a little battle with some 6 soldiers and an evil wizard. Ended up becoming 2 opposing armies, an evil wizard, and all sorts of other crazy nonsense going on. And we convinced, through a gentleman called Stephen Wiley, we were able to convince a large proportion of the Australian historical and reenactment community. So these are people that beat each other with swords for fun and make their own armour and historical accurate costumes to come out onto this dry lake bed in the middle of rural Victoria to bash the hell out of each other for 3 days straight. It was a lot of fun. And so Liam was our first AD. He also played one of the characters of the dialogue that Terry had written, and Damien was our DOP at that point.
So I guess what kind of became of those earlier iterations, and then what led into starting this Kickstarter campaign, which I think, from memory at the time, was the most successful Australian Kickstarter campaign. At that point.
At the time, we were asking for $45,000, which we thought was a stupid amount of money. We got $72,000, which was an incredibly stupid amount of money. And it's been ticking over ever since. So I guess the prologue worked for us, as did the original version of the film. Without those things, we certainly wouldn't have been able to do so well with the Kickstarter campaign in 2011.
Yeah, and so you used those initial, the prologue and what you'd shot as, I guess, pilot material, if you like, for
Yeah,
that?
I think that's a fair call. We didn't think we'd be reshooting the prologue. We thought the prologue would be like, that's the prologue now. But we definitely wanted to reshoot the main story, which is all the stuff centered around the bridge, the trolls, the talking horse, all of that we had to reshoot. The main problems we were running into is that we had this awesome visual effects artist called Christian Block, who was a Discworld fan living in LA, who was producing this amazing animation with the trolls, and just the DV footage that we'd shot the original version on just was not going to hold up to the quality of what Christian was doing. So we kept talking about rebooting, don't finish, just reboot, and that's what we did in 2011.
Right. Did you start, was Snowgum Film something that you started as like a purpose vehicle, or was it just you wanted to start a production company?
No, it was definitely a purpose vehicle. Brennan Penny and I, which was a mate and location scout. So on the very first day of location scouting, we were going up to Mount Buller to see if we could find some decent mountain backdrops. We were going through the beautiful misty snow gums, and that's when the production company was named. It was named on the location scouting for Trollbridge. The only reason Snowgum Films existed was to create this film.
Right. So I suppose, let's sort of put a marker in 2011. What were some of the, I guess, frustrations or challenges that you felt at that point, all right, now we have to reboot what's already been 8 years of work? Were you kind of aware that you were going to have even then another 5 or 6 years worth of work, or did you just have this vision that you knew you wanted to achieve?
No, the idea was that we were going to complete everything in 3 years. That's genuinely what we thought we could do. We just had no idea. I think at some point we set the quality level so high that it was completely beyond our capabilities. And, they talk about the 3-quadrant thing as far as art's concerned. You can either have something cheap, or you can have it quick, or you can, what's the third one? Cheap, quick, or quality. Quality is the third bar, and we knew that we wanted quality, and we had no money, so the quickness was not possible. We could only achieve 2 of those things at any one point. And we were determined to keep the quality, and that determination stayed on throughout the entire process.
Yeah, I think it definitely shows. But I guess I'm curious to know or to understand how you maintained that sense of or that kind of integrity of the quality of the project, because there must have been times in that initial 8 years and then in the subsequent 8 years that you felt like, I just want to fucking finish this.
Oh, every day. Every day. Why I didn't bail is this wonderful little trick that I do to myself, and that's I corner myself into things. What I'll do is I'll announce my intentions of doing something, and I'll get as large an audience as possible that I can announce that to, and then I'm trapped. I've effectively trapped myself into, like, I don't want to disappoint people. And that's kind of how I motivate myself, at least.
Yeah.
It's not a healthy way of motivating, but and I certainly wouldn't recommend it. Other people do it, but for me it works.
In the shooting of, as you said, Trollbridge is a very cinematic story, but it's also, you must have looked at it and gone, well, this is also very ambitious. It's about an old barbarian with a talking horse who embarks on a suicidal quest to battle a troll under a bridge. What were the, I guess, day-to-day challenges then once you're in reboot mode, in realising that, through green screen, through reconstruction, shooting in New Zealand, all of these things?
Well, because we'd made a lot of the mistakes before, anything to do with the secondary shoot ended up being quite easy. I think compared to what occurred after, I think post-production is when it got really tricky. So reshooting the film was actually the easy bit. Going over to New Zealand, I had an amazing producer, Aaron Morris, who looked after all of that. We took a skeleton crew over there, who we'd all worked together for so often now that we knew how each other worked. We worked really well together, and we got on with it. 2.5 days in Queenstown, we knocked the footage out, came back to Melbourne. There's a gentleman called Justin Dix, who's an incredible VFX artist and filmmaker who works in Melbourne. He lent us his art studio to use as a production studio, so we converted that, built the set, used a lot of his people to help us realise what all that would look like, and then we just shot it. And because we'd already done it before, it just wasn't hard. It was a lot of work, but we kind of knew the process.
And I imagine you had a lot of fun kind of doing that as well.
Yeah, it was like those studio shoots, those 5 days of studio shoots were 5 of the most pleasurable days I've ever had. We're all mates, we're all making a film that we knew how it was going to look, we knew what we wanted from it. It was just one of the best experiences of my life.
There is a real community. I mean, I can only really speak for Melbourne, but in the filmmaking and acting community, where there is that, you've got your guys, and then there's that kind of peripheral circle as well, and everyone just kind of mucks in, and it's generally a fairly pleasurable experience,
isn't it?
Yeah,
I love working here. It's great.
Yeah. So you wrap principal photography, and then I guess, as you said, the tricky part was then in post-production, because I guess. I mean, were there any further reshoots once you'd kind of got this in the can, or was it really just a process of overcoming hurdle after hurdle in the post-production?
There was a small number of shots that we needed of the troll under the bridge and climbing the bridge that we couldn't get during the 5 days of shooting. They were our pickup shots, and that was pretty much it. And then when we got to post-production, it was all on Christian Block's plate at that point to be able to understand how it was all going to come together. And it was literally, as you say, one hurdle at a time. It was a very blinkered way of looking at things. It was like, okay, first we need to do this character. We need to get the main troll up to scratch. So the modelling starts, then the rigging, then experimental in animation, texturing's going on at the same time. And all of that. And once you've got one troll figured out, then it's a lot easier to know how the other 3 trolls are going to look and act and behave. We used some software called Modo, and that was groundbreaking at the time to do this kind of animation within Modo. And it was basically just dealing with one problem at a time. Then the horse would come along, and we did that in Maya, and it was a whole new level of complexity with the fur. Because that required simulation as well, and then the sets were being extended digitally, and that was a new process that had a new team looking after it. So I was basically getting as many volunteers as possible that kind of were experts in their fields or knew enough about their fields to do something that was ambitious for them, that would look great on their showreel, and they would get involved and assist us along the way.
So it was all pretty much just people volunteering their time, moonlighting, and doing it for the love of the project.
Yeah, it was a completely non-profit project. None of us were paid. Aaron, Christian and I received some funding outside of crowdfunding to enable us to work for a year on the project, which we did. But none of the backer funding went into that. Like, that was all private investment, stuff like that. No one got paid.
It's incredible.
The helicopter pilot got paid, right, obviously for safety reasons.
I know that you had release dates initially scheduled for 2013 and 2014 for Discworld events.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about about pulling the pin on those to say, well, we're not going to be able to do this, we need more time, because I know that this film can be better than what we're going to be able to release then?
The film always felt like it was almost done. It was a running joke. I think it was about 6 months. Oh, we only need another 6 months. And it always felt like we only needed 6 months for a great number of years. So when we were making these announcements, we genuinely thought, or I genuinely thought, there was doubts from the other team, rightly so, that we weren't going to be able to hit target. And eventually the rest of the team hated talking about targets, and I would always be pushing for targets because it always made me feel better to know that we were working towards something at least, not just an endless revision cycle. So, the Discworld people are very forgiving. Because they've been watching the film for, they've been watching every single iteration over the years, either at the conventions here in Australia or in England. I would jump between the two. That would occur every off year. So they had seen it in its rawest form. So it wasn't too embarrassing to be able to take to them a film that was mostly finished or elements missing, simply because I knew that they'd seen it worse before and we had improved since then. And they've always been incredibly supportive of what we were doing. So I always felt that I was really showing it more to a family than a group of strangers.
Yeah, but I guess knowing what, or being kind of unwavering in your determination to realise what you thought was the ultimate vision was more important than a kind of, I guess, not egotistic milestone, but a milestone that was somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah, because our entire marketing spill was based on the quality, we knew that we wouldn't be able to cut back on that because people had funded the project based on the quality. People were volunteering on the project based on the quality. We wouldn't have been able to get the people we had volunteering on the project if we were half-assing it. So cutting corners, and we cut corners, but we tried cutting corners where they wouldn't show. Cutting corners wasn't really too much of an option.
So then I guess between, let's say, sort of 2014, when did you actually kind of put the flag in the sand and go that we're done?
Oh, that was last year. Maybe July, I think it was, or June. We had iterations that we were shopping around prior to that.
When you say shopping around, what do you mean?
Entering to film festivals.
Yeah, okay.
So we're entering film festivals because the film festivals that allow a work in progress, we were entering. And then, but the flag in the sand was July. And that was a soft flag. That's just when everybody was getting off the project. Me, Addison, and a few other artists, we've been still mucking around with some shots on the side because I just can't let the thing go.
Yeah, well, I mean, it must feel like such a huge part of your life and your identity, almost like, I mean, it's been a part of you for like you say, almost 16 years. Yeah. I could imagine it would be very, very difficult to kind of just let it go.
Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to let it go at this point. The trick is letting it go and then moving on to another project. And hopefully the film festival circuit can sort that out.
Sure. So what was it like, I guess, say 12 months ago when there was actually only 6 months left? Were you like going, okay, there's 6 months left, and everyone was like, yeah, whatever? Or was there like this kind of collective feeling like actually we can see the end is in sight?
No, I don't think anyone believed that there was 6 months left, and I think there was a fair bit of doubt even when the flag was put in the sand, whether it was actually finished or not. I don't know whether relief was the right... Like, because we've been working so closely together for such a long time, we were emotionally and mentally exhausted pretty much. So it wasn't like, oh, yay, we're finished. It was like, oh, my God. and I think, I know for a fact all three leads, we all had breakdowns, trying to get back involved with the real world. I mean, for the longest time, we were only communicating people via Skype and email, and just locking ourselves in those cramped offices that we'd built for ourselves. Like, we weren't all in the same office. Christian was in LA, Aaron was in his office in his flat, I was in my office in my house, and we're all just chipping away at the film, the isolation does crazy things to your brain.
Yeah. And I guess, I mean, even like in a kind of pragmatic sense, the world and technology and everything would have changed so much. I mean, the lead actor is quite old when you started shooting the film. Just the kind of changes in personnel and personality over that period of time. I guess when you do come to finish it, it must be like, wow, what have we just kind of been in or come out of, or any of those sort of things.
Yeah, it was. We were always chasing that technology. By the time we finished, motion capture had become really cheap and accessible, which wasn't available to us when we began, and that would have cut so much time out of the process. But then we would have lost a lot of the beautiful artwork that our hand animators were able to bring to the project. So that was a corner that we could have cut had the technology have existed at the time. A lot of people, when they've watched the films, have said our drone footage is incredible. It's like, damn, that's a helicopter. That's actually a helicopter, not a drone, because drones didn't exist when we shot that stuff. So the technology change has been different. As far as personalities or whatnot's concerned, I think everyone's pretty much the same. We have all aged. I've lost all my hair. My beard is longer.
You definitely had long hair, I think, when you were filming that from memory.
Yeah, I still do. It's just now on my chin.
Yeah. So I guess moving, like, what do you have plans to do another project? What would you kind of say? Would you embark on the same sort of thing again, knowing that the time commitment or the time investment that would be involved? Would you recommend someone who was 15 years younger than you to embark on a journey like that?
Oh, hell no. I'd slap them around and say, don't do that. There's got to be an easier way. This was the way we knew how to do it. And I think every filmmaker approaches things completely differently. We were definitely the crowdfunding generation, as you say. We did it way before Kickstarter existed. And maybe we thought we could achieve some things a lot more simpler than we were able to achieve it. I don't know what the solution is, but I couldn't recommend anyone spends 15 years on anything. I don't know anyone who's done that. I don't know if it was incredibly a healthy thing to do. But that said, the art on the other end speaks for itself.
Yeah.
Or does it? I don't know. I don't know. I think I'm still recovering. Like I said, we got out in July. What was that? 7 months ago. And I still feel like I'm still trying to integrate with being a human again.
Like I said before, I guess, how do you kind of identify in the world when that's no longer something, like when that's no longer a pursuit, something that has been a pursuit for probably almost half of your life?
Well, I guess the thing is it's not over for me yet. I mean, I've still got the festival circuit ahead, so it's not completely out of my hands. And then hopefully I can fill that void that people joke around me. Oh, Daniel, you're in trouble. Once Trollbridge is gone, you're going to collapse. No, I'll just fill it with something else. One thing I did do that I wanted to always do once the film was completed was to ask my very long-term partner to marry me, and I got to do that after the film had screened. For me, that was being able to close that off and being able to open up myself to actually a proper life. And she said yes, so I'm incredibly happy.
Congratulations, man! That's amazing.
Thank you. So I don't believe there's going to be a void in my life. It's just a new iteration of Daniel. Yeah.
Well, how will you define the success of Trollbridge now? What would be a successful life for the film?
If it does what it was intended to do, and it was always designed to be a calling card, like all short films are supposed to be business cards. This is the quality of film that I can make, and that's for the entire crew and cast that are working on as well. It's a publicity machine. If that can provide us enough publicity, not just for me, but for the other people working on it as well, and that helps with their show reels and being able to get them working. It's already got quite a number of our VFX artists that worked on this. Aaron and I were constantly writing up references for our crew, and they would subsequently get work.
Brilliant.
So it's been a great vehicle for that, and provided it can get the rest of us work as well, then that'll be outstanding.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. You know, anything that you make in this kind of with this kind of ethos, it's that communal like push. We're all going to do this together, and we're all going to rise together. Yeah, and I think we achieved that to a great degree. But yeah, now it's this last hurdle with the film festival circuit that we've got to deal with. It's the last thing. Are you fantasizing about the next project?
Always.
What, you got a little preview or anything?
No, I can't. Well, it's up in the air what it's going to be, and it's going to be what it is going to be entirely dependent on how well Trollbridge is received, because that's going to depend on how much money people trust me with, because I will never do crowdfunding again, just because it's just way too long. I would like to continue making stuff on the quality of Trollbridge, but it's got to be completely fully funded. Everybody's got to be paid for it, at which point we're talking tens of millions of dollars, and who's going to trust a short film maker with that kind of cash? So now it needs to do really well on the festival circuit.
To get that sort of traction.
Yeah.
What were, I guess, just quickly before we do wrap up, what if anyone was looking to start a crowdfunding campaign, because you did have run something that has been so successful on that front, what do you think the kind of key markers are to running a successful crowdfunding campaign?
In personality and enthusiasm for the product. If you can translate that, I see so many crowdfunding videos where the filmmakers themselves aren't present, or they're not revealing who they are. I think people like investing in the idea of somebody, not just a product. They want to know that their money is going towards not just creating the art, but enabling the artist to do so as well. I think that's where people get a real kick out of crowdfunding. But if you are going to do it, I do really think you need to be very careful about expectations and what you can reasonably achieve with the money you've got. I would push people to work on project or get projects off of the ground that are very achievable, and get way more money than you need for the project, because you definitely will still not have enough money.
And I think that personal connection is definitely imperative.
Oh yeah. And it's amazing the amount of crowdfunding videos that you see. And I used to get asked all the time, what do you think of my crowdfunding video? Can you give me tips? And I would give the people tips, and they wouldn't like the tips, and then they'd launch it, and then it would fail. It's like, well, geez, I don't know, I tried.
Yeah, that's a weird paradigm.
Yeah, sometimes I think people just want
you to tell you that they're good.
Yeah, rare affirmation, and there's nothing worse than that. Just being told something is good over and over and over again, because you're unable to learn or grow or find those issues and then resolve those issues. If you're not aware of it, then you can't. Well, you're just, you're playing with yourself, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I hope that Trollbridge has an incredibly successful festival run.
Oh, thank you.
And next time we're chatting, it'll be about the next project. I finish all my conversations with what I hope is an upward sentiment, which is, question is, what makes you silly?
What makes me silly?
Yeah.
Oh, geez. Film related, I'm assuming?
Anything. However you interpret the question.
Sure. My fiance at the moment is what makes me silly, mate. Best thing in my life right now.
Yeah. In what way does she make you silly?
Oh, gee.
goofy, I guess.
I have. She's incredible at keeping me straight, as in keeping me focused on the art and being able to direct me when I'm lost, essentially. She's always been there at every turn, particularly in Troll Bridge, and has been able to pull me out of those dark times like you wouldn't believe. And believe me, there have been many, many dark times on the project, and she's always been waiting there at the end and being able to help me, pull me through and figure out who I am again.
Yeah.
That's not silly though. That's quite poignant.
It's very insightful.
Insightful. Right.
How did you guys meet?
In a projection room.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was working at the Rivoli. I was there to see a mate. It was the Pirates of the Caribbean 2 screening. Was the opening night. I really wanted to see it, and she was running the gig.
And what does she still work in? Does she work in film as well?
Yeah, she now works at Acme. She works in the preservation centre. So old film, old VHS, old just basically anything that's very important to Melbourne or Australia. Her job is to preserve that stuff digitally, because it's all going to mess right now.
Wow.
It's a lot of the film prints are turning to vinegar. So it's a bit of a race to be able to get all of that stuff in a manner that it's not going to degrade any further.
I mean, not to get too earnest about it, but I think when you're living or when you're pursuing an artistic life, it is very important to have someone to kind of ground you and kind of pull you back into the real world.
Yeah. So maybe it's the opposite. She's what gets me out of the silly phase and keeps me sane.
Well, that's a first. I've never had someone give me the opposite. So.
Well, that's silly.
That is silly. Thanks so much, Dan.
No, thank you.